So Debbie's got here scaffolded value-added excellence, distilled and room for off-piste. Exactly, and the proportion of that will be different depending on the need. Exactly so. One where mistakes are encouraged as well as positive and reinforcing conversation. And that's exactly it. There will be there may well be a narrative that will be our starting block, but there may need space for experimentation. And as a learning profession, our ability to provide a safe space online for people to be able to make mistakes and hypothesis test is really important. Machine that reads my calendar, use of tools and reports insights to me to tell me where I am, doing new stuff, same old stuff. It tells me where I'm learning, where I could learn, what I've done, gives me a map if I want to do something different. And this is the thing, that's a lot of, there's a lot of needs in there, but exactly, the readers depend on what I'm trying to do on one particular day. Tools alone don't enable behavioural or cultural change. That technology should be invisible to the learner. That's exactly it, Etty. We get involved in a lot more projects here at Willow, looking at learning portals, where the idea is that you're starting to aggregate and pull together different feeds of learning so I can get at what I need. You know, the organisation may feel very proud of the money that it's invested in their collaborative system or their learning management system or their CRM or their video channel. But you're absolutely right, Etty. As an individual consumer of it, I don't really care. I just want to be able to get at what I need to get to very easily, very seamlessly. We've got here social functions, video, easy to use, skills and areas for improvement, absolutely. Opportunities for learners to add their own knowledge, exactly so. You know, if we were talking about scaffolding, as we have here, then that is about setting the scene. It's setting out the table, but it's about people creating the content. Assistance in accessing what I really need to know. I may not be clear at the start. And that's exactly it, Liz. That's the one thing that I would say is that quite often when you look at platforms and new products that are coming onto the market, particularly because there is a drive with social learning and informal learning in 70-20-10 for people say, right, okay, well, let's create a social learning environment where people can curate what they want and create what they want. And that is very important, don't get me wrong, but I may need to know where I'm starting and what I'm trying to achieve, because in the end, businesses still have things they need to deliver. Now, the things they need to deliver may be changing at a faster rate than they ever have before, but we still need to know where we're going to. So some scaffolding, and I'll come on to Julian Stodd talks about this quite a lot, but some scaffolding can help ensure that those conversations there are of maximum value. And just as Debbie says there, it's about the not feeling alone, because in this world of complexity, it can be very isolating and we can suffer from cognitive overload. So not feeling alone is very important. There's lots more good dialogue. I'm not going to read them all out here, but thank you ever so much. There's some really good stuff going on there. And the sorts of things that you start to now see in a rich learning environment, you know, if you're looking at a feature, if you took this now down to a feature list, we've been talking about sort of conceptually what it should look like, what it should offer. But these are the sorts of things that you would expect to see. So an LMS isn't simply the purveyor of content, that it is bringing in the voice of the learner, that it's seamlessly combined in the way that we deliver programs, that we have reporting that is intelligent, it's not just on completion. You know, we deride and look back with some humour on the happy sheet that we used to be given out of the workshop, but how much on online learning really in the past 10 years has changed beyond that, beyond immediate feedback. Intelligent reporting is going to start to help us look at the contribution that learners make, what they do after they've left the learning, and start to attribute that to real business value. We look at obviously mobile and offline, user-generated and curated, personalisation, being able to have portable qualifications and qualifications portfolio. One thing that is probably the least sexy thing on this list, though, that is incredibly important is integration. And David, you said there the LMS should predict my needs and make recommendations. Well, in the end, there are an awful lot of different systems and feeds in to a rich learning environment that will enable us to do that, David. But it means that we need to have an open-minded attitude to technology, and integration is going to be absolutely key, because there won't be a one-size-fits-all, and neither will there be a one-tool-fits-all. But you shouldn't be the slave to an ERP system as your only choice. And believe you me, as I come from an SAP background, I can talk from some experience on that one. But let me focus on one of these just for a moment before we move on to some of the other points that we wanted to cover today. But if we look at something like, for example, like gamification, now that is something that, if I were to have said today, I'll do a webinar on gamification, we probably also would have had quite a few attendees on it, because it's an incredibly popular topic. But again, it is about context. It's about making these things count. So if I focus on something like gamification, I read a really interesting case study on this recently, where gamification had real impact. Now, often gamification is being interpreted into, we must bring games dynamics into the way that we develop content. Now, in some environments, that can work really, really well. But the old adage that I always bring out is, if you haven't got the budget for Call of Duty, then whatever game you decide to put in place rather than traditional content, you're going to be chasing your tail, and you're going to be investing an awful lot of money in content that you will have to keep up with, keeping the attention, because just the chemical reaction that we have to a game and game dynamics, you get a case of diminishing returns. We have to come up with something new. But that's really not what gamification is talking about. It's doing things to make it count, and it's gamifying things that encourage behaviors that have real impact. And there's a startup software business in the US that have been working with utility companies to persuade householders to actively lower their utility bills by pitching them against neighbours on their street. So they're in direct competition with people in their locality, and they get rewards and recognition for reducing their utility bills. So not only is there a bit of element of friendly competition and getting one up on the Joneses, but it also has a real tangible impact. And again, it's the same in organisations. If you're going to gamify things, why are you doing it? What behaviours are you trying to encourage? And I think the best examples of gamification are looking where people are adding value. So making contributions to the knowledge of the organisation, recommending things to people, putting people in contact with other people that will help them. That's the type of thing that really drives real value in the organisation. And you can gamify that because you can see the real benefit. And Rebecca's put here, hopefully that competition stays friendly. Well, yeah, exactly, so that they're not sabotaging each other's gas lines, I suppose. That's a good point. But my card tells me my average MPG, and I try to get a higher average. Exactly, so you can see that game dynamics are around us. But if we look at it very literally and go, right, so everything we do must be a game, well, what's the behaviour that you're trying to impact? And that's what you need to think about when you think about, where do I start with something like gamification? And then there are very creative ways and organisations like ourselves that can help you to bring that to bear. But it's thinking about, what am I trying to influence in the first place? Now, I'm only going to pause for a moment. This feels like an ad break, doesn't it? As a little pause. But the reason why I mention our platform here is some of the things that we've had to think about, and I would hope that all providers would in this space. But you can think about this as a purchaser of learning technology, is the sorts of things that you are going to now need to look at are things like interoperability, because there won't be one solution to this very complex and fluid need. That, just as David was saying before, personalization is going to need to be important. But again, just like gamification, personalization isn't just my one individual, I want to be able to learn how to play the ukulele, speak Mandarin, and take over this organisation in 2 years' time. Now, they may be all great ambitions, absolutely. But personalisation is also all about the context of the organisation and what I need to achieve in my role. So personalisation through technology and through the environment that you create in your organisation, and through a learning management system like ourselves in Pathway, is about providing the context for, I understand your role, I understand where you are in your career, I understand the challenges in the projects that you're working on at the moment. Here is some great content and people and recommendations that will support you on that journey. So personalisation becomes that balance between my needs as an individual and the needs of the organisation. So these are the sorts of things that we are being asked to deliver, and it's the type of things that when you're talking about what environment you need to create, these are the sorts of things I suspect you're going to need to start to consider when you're going out to market to look at your next solution. And what does it mean? Well, it means, for example, for organisations like ourselves, we have to think about, well, what's the future going to look like? What will the next generation be? And you know what? There are some things I can't possibly predict, and none of us could on this webinar today. But that's why interoperability and integration and that open-mindedness is important. So for us, creating portals that pull through feeds from different sources of content, not just from an LMS, that's going to be the future, because there will be formal learning scaffolds in your learning management system, but there'll also be lots of other rich dialogue, vibrancy, and new content and new research that you want to bring at the fingertips of the organisation. And that can't be controlled or owned in one place. Just as we said about learning as a strategy, you can't control learning. Equally with your technology, this is about opening up and providing easy access and aggregating all of that really, really great stuff. And it means, hopefully, and this is a prediction. Now, whether or not all of you would agree with this, and this is a commentary on where Oracle are at the moment. And if you've had headaches with going through IT and being able to procure, you may not agree with this. But there is certainly looks to be a trend, and you can see it in the bottom line performance of organisations like Oracle and SAP, that software purchasing is becoming more decentralised, with decision-making power shifting away from IT and weakening the selling advantage of a one-stop supplier. It's because we are becoming more technically literate, and we are able to pull together systems that we need to create the right environment for us, because a one-size-fits-all, just as we always say that with our content and our programs, one size fits all, is exactly the same for technology. So your skills in understanding what that environment needs to look like and being up with tech, reach out to the networks that are out there. There are lots of people on the line today that are chatting in chat here that are really well connected in the technology space. And the type of people you need to reach out to who will say, have you seen this new tool? Have you seen this new piece of technology? And they will help you navigate this, just as we do with our customers. So that's the future of the LMS itself. But what about the future of the content, or I say the future of the LMS, the future of the learning environment? What about the content that we put in it? Well, really, rather than looking specifically at what will the trends be in terms of visual design, of interaction, of multi-device, actually, this is much more about orchestration. So learning design, understanding how elements flow to enable transformation. So for the learning designer, it becomes deciding what is the optimal blend. And that's just not blended content. That is the blend of activities and facilitation, all those things that we put together to support a learning journey. And another way that you can look at this, and the way that we always have to look at it when we are designing content for our customers, because we can't just stop with the e-learning that we create. We need to make sure that the environment is in a place that when they get that content, they have all the other supporting activities ready so that it hits. The way you can think about this is the Uberization of learning. So think mobile, think just in time, build communities where connections can be made, curate, feedback, elegant design. Reason why you think about something like Uber is that's a lesson in thinking about that individual, where they are, so what their context is, what devices they're using, what they want access to, how we can make that process flow much easier and a lighter touch. What can we do? That's what learning needs to be. So that doesn't mean ditching those substantial programs. So if you've got leadership development programs, project management programs, highly specialist technical skills, they will still require the professional skills of content development houses to look at how we can best support them with the formal learning that we provide. But for the learner, just as we were saying, as Etty was saying before, I don't really care what technology it is, it should feel seamless. The content should feel like a natural flow. So you use the strengths of each device, you provide the just in time when I need it, but you build communities and learning scaffolds for more substantive stuff. That you get engagement and feedback just as Uber do in order to then improve your content. And Etty's saying here, I know it sounds like stating the obvious, but going to say it anyway, working with SMEs within the business to develop, curate, identify content that aligns to skills and capability to build. Etty, no, it's a really, really important thing to bring out, because I'm going to bring that out in a moment when we talk about the future of the learning profession. This is exactly it. At the moment, I'm talking about the technology and the way that we orchestrate content, but understanding the right things to do, you're absolutely right. This is about who, again, ownership. Who owns the content? This isn't the ownership of learning development. These are the subject matter experts in the business. This is about our strategic goals and the business drivers that we're trying to change, we're trying to improve. And from that, that's where we'll find the content. We don't just start with the learning needs analysis, which I'll come to in a little while. And in fact, this is exactly the point you want to make here. I want to ask you this question, actually, when we think about, what's the right type of thing to do to meet a learning need. In your view, what makes an effective call centre? What would you expect the main learning needs to be in a call centre? So I'll give you a couple of minutes just to think about that. Listening skills. Very, very good point, Etty. Empathy, yep. So think about when you call a call centre, what are you expecting of that person? Because there's also, of course, an expectation, lots of stakeholders, is the expectation of the organisation itself, of your colleagues in the call centre. But think about your experience. Efficiency and proficiency, yep. Knowledgeable, absolutely. Handling different callers, empathy, non-visual communication, yep. So you can start to see these things coming through. These are sorts of things that we would expect, okay? But depending on your environment, what the call centre deals in, what its current performance is, what types of products and services it supports, it could well be different. But one of the tools that we really like to use here, and Debbie is on the line today, and Debbie's done an awful lot of work in this area in the past, is on the benefits tree. And if you think about this, then we can look at learning needs in quite a different way. In the end, call centres are great environments because actually they measure just about everything. But in the end, why do they exist? Well, we want to make sure that people continue to buy from us because they get a great service, they know what products and services are available to them, that we are able to upsell and cross-sell, we're able to retain customers, and they'll recommend us to our friends. And what does that look like? Well, the sorts of things that we'll be measuring are things like products and services are a closer fit to customer need because we're listening to customer feedback. So they're aligned to customer needs. And that's because the quality of the products and services are naturally higher as a result. That our responsiveness is improved, that our customer satisfaction is improved, and we can measure that. So how do we go about those things? If that's what we want, then what sorts of things do we need to know? Well, from the individual's perspective, they need to know their role. They need to know what customers need to know. They need to be able to innovate and share ideas, better ways to handle difficult customers, just as we had there, to handle customer objections. That our transfer rates of knowledge are increased, so no matter who you call, everybody knows the latest stuff, and that the knowledge is validated. So answers that we're giving, for example, if you've got fraud and revenue insurance is important in a call centre, it may well be that those instances happen very rapidly and we need to disseminate that out to the audience at large. So in order to achieve that, well, we need people achieving their potential rapidly. We need to reduce the amount of direct training so that we're learning on the job and that we're continually innovating and improving the knowledge of the organisation. So problem solving needs to speed up. We need to share approaches between buildings so that knowledge just doesn't reside in one location. But if we do those sorts of things, we have happier people. So staff turnover's down, churn, and that's a really important thing in call centres. That we improve the morale, we're able to serve customers better, we can improve against our targets, single contact resolutions up, so that means customer satisfaction's up, we improve processes. And can you see, as we start to look at needs from this potential, it isn't just one particular metric that we're looking at. We're looking at all sorts of different things. Some of it will be formal, the knowledge of our products and services, so we can produce some beautiful content around that, but others will be ways in which we transfer knowledge between buildings. So running regular after-action reviews, having knowledge centres, having champions and organisations that facilitate communities looking at how we can better improve the workplace, how we can learn from objections that customers have. So the environment does become more fluid and more complex, but much more interesting and exciting. And when we look at content in this way, we can start to quickly see that's where the formal content needs to be, that's where the just-in-time content needs to be, that's where the informal conversations need to happen, that's where we need to take the tacit knowledge and make it explicit. It gives you a much better benchmark of understanding what really goes on in the organisation. And that enables you to build really effective learning paths that have good formal content, so customer service academy, product training, supporting the systems we use in the call centre, through to working practices, daily after-action reviews, news portals and FAQs, leaderboards and a bit of competition, through to community, cross-site communities, customer communities, getting customer insights, representatives from marketing and product development, and then mentoring and champions, so people that are able to develop the talent in our call centres and look for future talent to move on to other roles, quick masterclasses from people that may have specific knowledge, let's say, of the iPhone, and then learning portals and community sites of technology that enable this all to happen. This is what it looks like. This is how you decide what's important in formal content and what other things you need to do. And this is one of Julian Stodd's quotes, actually, from his book, The Social Age. The broadcast model of communication has been trumped by co-creation of stories that are themselves co-owned. So although there'll be some truisms in our call centre environment where we need to know about the products and services, so take a telco, for example, new handsets, new products, new tariffs, that actually the way in which we communicate with our customers, the way that customer interaction really happens, they're created by the people doing the work and they own it. And so those voices need to be brought into your formal content as well. And if you need any persuading about why communities are so important to augment formal content, then take a look at Xiaomi. They are the huge tech company in China. They have a huge foothold in China, but they're spreading across the world. And they are one of the most successful tech startups in history. And the reason why they've done that is that they put effort into soliciting customer feedback and their ideas to continuously improve their products. They have a user community that helps co-create their products and services. And they are worth many, 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 many billions. And other organizations have done the same. So if you think about the power from a monetary perspective, think about the power from a learning perspective. Why would you not have communities supporting your formal learning? Another aspect of content for the future that's getting a lot of traction, as well as communities really starting to bubble up and take up a lot of the conversation as well, is VR. And like I said, Sony today have just released their new VR headset. And of course, Oculus Rift is coming out for the consumer market soon. And you've got things like Google Cardboard at the lower end of the scale. But I really like this quote, and this was from Wired as well, debating the value of VR. Again, all of this technology is about context. So if you think about the call centre and what's the context for the formal content and what we put in formal and what we put in informal, if we then elevate this onto augmented reality or virtual reality, for experiences to be worth doing in VR, it has to be worth putting the headset on. It's got to be something that makes the most of you being somewhere. So you can see here, this is from our friends at Immerse Learning, partners for us in virtual reality and virtual environments. Now, creating environments where it may be difficult for me to be, but the context in the environment is incredibly important. That's where VR can have real value. But if I'm in an office already and I can go to my boardroom or I can go to a particular area of it, is it worth me creating that in VR as well when I can get up and walk around? Maybe not. So again, it's about context. I think VR is going to have some huge applications in high risk, complex environments where the ability to be able to test out physical interactions with your environment it's going to revolutionise. The price point is changing. We're doing a lot more work in this space. It's really exciting times. But this isn't the future of learning for everything. It's got to be making the most of you being somewhere. And I think that was a great way to think about what the future of VR is going to look like and whether you should or shouldn't invest, because in the end, this webinar is all about how do we make good decisions with learning. But a way in which you can start to build that context is, again, building the narrative into content. Now, I've got a couple of examples here, but I'm going to show you them on video. This piece for Lloyd's that we did, which is using video, using our friends at the Edge Picture Company to create narrative video. This is where you take from, this is a compliance program on diversity and inclusion. We could have set out lots of scenarios and asked questions about when this is appropriate, when this isn't appropriate. But these stories are gathered from real people thinking about previous work experiences that they've been, and us being able to tell the story. It's owned by them, and we try and immerse people in that narrative so you make an emotional connection with it. Again, it adds that context. And you can even do it with something that is a little bit less emotive than something like diversity and inclusion. With this piece here that we developed on customer service, again, rather than talking about what does good customer service look like, well, let's experience it. Now, I haven't got the audio switched on for this webinar, but we're going to meet this customer and we're going to hear the customer advisors. So we're seeing it from their point of view. It's a POV piece, and they are interacting with the customer, asking questions, and we're getting insight from them in terms of what sort of types of questions you should be asking, how you think the customer is reacting, what you would do next, and we ask them to rate that, etc., etc. But you can see with this type of content, a light touch with telling the story adds real context, because it's important here. Just as we talk about VR could be important where I need to integrate with the vision environment, so integrate, I need to interact with the vision environment, then you can take this down into e-learning content rather than ask those questions and trying to find the words to tell a visual story. Tell the story. Ask your subject matter experts what really goes on around here. What conversations do we really have with our suppliers, with our customers and stakeholders, and bring them to life through telling the story. Stories are going to be and will continue to be incredibly important, because as things change around us very, very quickly, that narrative is where the real knowledge sits. So we do a lot of work with our content development around creating effective narratives. Now, I'm aware that we are flying through the time here, and as always, time always gets away from me on these webinars. We've looked at the future of the learning environment, we've looked at the future of content, but what about the future of data? Because with all of this, we've got to make good decisions about the environments that we create, about the content that we purchase. How do we know that we're doing the right thing? Well, one of my favourite methods of doing this, and any of you that have been on my webinars previously, will be about the value chain. I think this is one of the best places to start, and it's a simple, straightforward way for you to connect with the business and help them understand the importance of learning and how you're going to support them on that journey. So let's take something like this, increasing market share. Well, there are lots of different ways in which market share could be affected. We may need to have better market intelligence. Perhaps we don't know our market well enough. We need to know more about what our customers think about the products and services that we deliver, and a better product fit. We need better delivery quality, and we need to be much, much quicker to market. We may need more referrals and case studies so that we're able to build brand advocacy and be recommended to others, because we know that obviously the cost of retaining a customer and getting business from them is less than getting a new customer, and that our product quality needs to increase. Now, when we look at needs from this perspective, it's really easy to start to see the emergent formal learning needs. Or better market intelligence could be about skills and capability. It could be about effective use of our CRM. With better customer insights, it could be that we need to develop communities to better understand what our customers need. With better delivery quality, maybe we do need to look at something like Six Sigma, for goodness sake. We don't know what that may well be in your context, but by applying this type of model, whenever we work with customers, we're able to ensure that the learning needs that we define will fit a real business measure. And that's what's really important. And that's what helps build a compelling case around the learning solutions you want to put in your organization. If you can connect with subject matter experts and stakeholders in the business to address their real business challenges and do it in this way, it helps you both to co-create what the learning needs are, going back to Etty's point about co-creating those learning needs. But all of those things back in our value chain, there are numbers behind these that we can measure either through our CRM, through sales, through customer recommendations, through referrals, through product quality. So there'll be quality measures in terms of recalls, those sorts of things. But it means we have to be really intelligent about the type of data that we deliver. So this isn't just about completion. This isn't just about in 6 months' time, have you remembered what you've learned? This is about knowing what business metrics we are trying to influence, somebody caring about those and monitoring them, and ways in which you can do that, and ways which you will be doing that in future years are through things like XAPI, but they may, as an interim measure, also be through things like what we use, SSRS, which is SQL Server reporting, which enables you to interrogate your databases more intelligently to find out what's really happening. So are people that collaborate and sharing resources, are people that are taking part in this formal learning program, is that affecting our outcomes? And you can get at this data. This data is available in the systems that we provide and systems that you already have. But that data isn't enough. The path to data intelligence needs engagement with the business, like we were talking about there with the value chain, to understand what it really means. So you need to know what you're trying to influence before you start writing any learning content, and then you can use your data intelligently to understand whether or not it's had an impact. And what do you think the sexiest job of the 21st century is going to be? Well, according to the Harvard Business Review, the sexiest job is going to be data scientist. Now, it's important to reflect here that this doesn't really require big enterprise level systems, but it requires business logic. It requires you to connect with the business and understand what measures you are trying to influence and be able to map the learning needs to those measures. But as our systems are able to start to gather more and more data, and we have systems talking to each other and integrated, then the roles of data scientists, they may be roles you need to think about bringing into your organization to support your learning function, to make sense of that data so that I can see whether community activity, whether people posting onto our video channel, whether people completing this learning, their efficiency in our CRM, bringing these things together to find out what things are really having an influence on our business measures. That's going to be important. And the rise of data science will be really vital in this space. So those are the sorts of skills that you're going to need to support you in your journey. You can engage with the business, you can have those really great conversations, but people helping you make sense of data going forward, it may feel like at the moment that that's a really big unwieldy thing, but it is coming, and it's something that you really need to get your head around. And again, reach out to that learning, that social network out there of learners. And Joe, I know that you will really, really back me up on this. There are lots of people that will be able to support you in understanding where to go with this. And that brings me really round to my final point, is that there's lots of exciting things on the horizon with technology and with virtual reality and augmented reality, with the processing power of our phones, with being able to have integrated systems where I'm not just tied to an enterprise system. I can bring in all sorts of systems to create a really great learning environment. But what does this mean for us? And it means that the learning profession is now becoming one filled with connectors and catalysts. And when I met David Spiglan in DevLearn, and he leads learning in a company that are literally full of rocket scientists, he described his role to me as putting the right people together in the right environment at the right time with the right tools. That's how we catalyze learning. He saw his job as a learning professional is making sure that he didn't get in the way and that he broke down barriers to things getting in the way. And if we look at the scientific definition of a catalyst, a substance that causes a chemical reaction to happen more quickly, or a person or event that causes change or action, that is what we are all about, breaking down those barriers and providing the optimal environment for those things to happen. And another way that we can do that is to help to make sure that before we jump to that learning need, that the problem that we have stated is well solved. So a problem well stated is a problem half solved, according to Jane Bozarth, and she's absolutely right. It's why using things like value chain will help you navigate this changing world of technology. You don't have to worry about what the next trend in tool tech will be, because if you can find good ways of stating business problems, the solutions are out there and you can reach out to your network and they will become obvious and you'll know you'll have confidence in the right thing to do. And so when next time a manager asks to book a member of the team on a decision-making course following a performance review meeting, what should you do? And you all know this, is starting a conversation on what factors are required for effective decision-making. Why is that not the starting point here? Why is effective decision-making so important to us? Is that the problem? Have we already found the solution to a problem that didn't exist? If you do use tools like value chain, you can really get to the performance challenge. And by that, you can then start to come up with some really sexy, exciting solutions. And to get to that real issue, that means that suppliers like ourselves, we can't be order takers either. When people come to us to say, we want some really beautiful, fantastic e-learning content, we have to ask the questions, why? What are you trying to achieve? Is it best achieved through e-learning? Is it best achieved through this method, that method? We have to ask those questions. We can't be order takers either, or we're not doing our job properly. I've got a series out there really on all this where it brings it all together, about creating a performance environment, about creating the conditions, the tools and technology, setting goals, community and people. And you might find that really useful if you found today's content useful. And I'll share some links on that at the end of the session. But I'm aware that I have about 60 seconds left, which is absolutely ridiculous. So do I have any questions from the audience? So please pop them in the chat and I will try and get through as many as I can, if you're happy to hang on. Oh, thanks, Joe. I know exactly. Take a breath there. Joe's used to this now. She knows what I'm like. Thank you, Rebecca. Any questions, anybody? Just pop it out there again. But thank you. It's lovely to have the nice comments. But just while you've got me, any more questions? We could spend probably an hour on each of the sessions. We could split this into a series and do some more, I think. But if you haven't got any questions for me right now, drop me a line afterwards. I'll be sharing also the resources list from today, some of the things that I pulled on to develop this today. But what I'm going to be doing over the next few months is actually breaking this down into future of learning, into a series where we can look at a theme in a lot of depth. And I'll be doing that via our content as well, via our blog and LinkedIn Pulse. But I'll also be running some future seminars on this as well, because as you can see, it's a huge topic and we could spend probably half a day on this. But hopefully it's given you some inspiration and places that you can start so you have the confidence to make the right decisions. Things will keep changing, but that's brilliant and that's all good and it makes it all very exciting. So thank you ever so much, everybody, for joining me today. I will be sharing this webinar and also the slides on SlideShare. So do tell your friends, and I hope to see you on a future WillowDNA webinar. Thanks, everybody.